I predicted an EV public charging price war. I get countless comments asking me what happened to it. Others tell me, well, CPO is just going to hike prices once they've got a monopoly. Was I wrong? Or is a pricing war about to happen? Or already happening? I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. Well, public chargers back in the electric highway day were free of charge to use, but that was never going to last. As I travel around the country, I meet people charging, I interview others who run charger networks, I take details of prices, availability. I do have a very good picture of what is happening generally. There are always going to be local differences, but we need to see what's happening generally. Well, without a doubt, the number of chargers being installed is absolutely amazing. 5-6 years ago, it really was a postcode lottery. Today, we are much more likely to find a chosen location having 20, 30, even 40 chargers available. Specific highlights of this include Gretna Green, small town in Scotland, which has more than 50 ultra-rapid chargers. Rugby has got more than 70 and Exeter's got more than 60. Well, these are just staggering numbers compared to just 4 or 5 years ago. Wherever I travel, I see new charging installations going in. Most motorway services now have at least 2 CPOs, and most have more than a dozen ultra-rapid chargers available. There are still a few which are appallingly bad, having just 1 or 2 original electric highway grid-served chargers now of 50 kilowatt dual bay, but these are becoming much rarer. We're now also seeing a massive boom in hubs. In this case, a hub is defined as more than 20 chargers. These are often off the motorways, but usually handy for them. These also will have 20, 30, maybe 40 chargers at each of them. With an increase in the number of chargers and with EV drivers in many locations having a choice of where they can charge, those are the ideal conditions for a price war. So what evidence do I have of a price war actually going on at this time? Well, when I look at the number of EVs that are on the road today, I fully understand why people in general are not seeing any of the price war that I predicted going on. See, when the first EV arrived, there were many out there who was predicting, well, these would just take over really quickly and we'd see EVs absolutely everywhere. The ICE cars would just disappear equally quickly and we'd all see an all-electric future very quickly. But this was just utterly unrealistic. If I look at the UK, we have 36 million cars on the road, the vast majority are petrol or diesel. They sell around 2 or 3 million brand new cars every year. So many people did a very simple sum and said, 36 million cars divided by 2 million new ones a year. It's going to take 18 years for EVs to take over. But of course, that's plainly ludicrous. First, not everybody buys a new car. There are about 4-5 times as many people who never buy a new car than there are those who do regularly buy a new car. And some of those buying new cars, they'll be existing EV car owners, just switching to a new model or replacing one at the end of a lease with another one. And of course, not everybody in the first year who bought a new car wanted an electric car. Of course not. And even if everybody did, and even if all 2 million of them wanted an EV, there just weren't enough EVs for sale anywhere in the whole world to meet that sort of demand just for the UK. So, in reality, just a small percentage of the 2 million who buy a new car every year or two actually bought an EV in the early years, leaving a massive number of drivers happily driving around in the petrol or diesel cars with absolutely no reason to change whatsoever. And this was also totally predictable. I really don't understand why people expected anything different. And of the 2 million new cars sold every year, I predicted that an increasing number every year would be EVs. And then when the government passed the EV mandate stating that all new cars sold from 2030 can only be EVs, at that time we'll have every single new car sold in the UK being an EV. But that doesn't account for the 20 or 30 million petrol or diesel cars still on the road. See, most of them will never buy a new car. They will simply wait until they need to replace their used car, and they will replace it with another used car. Now, in time, the number of used EVs being sold will increase, meaning that one day they'll have no choice other than to buy a used EV. Well, if we take the fantastic example of Norway today, almost nobody buys anything new other than an EV. We still find less than a third of the cars on the road are electric, just under a third are petrol, and just over a third are diesel. And there's some odd hybrids and plug-ins hybrids scattered around too. So even in the country where everybody who buys a new car buys an EV, around 2/3 of the cars on the road are those that remain petrol or diesel. And those may take another 5, 10, 15, even 20 years before all of those will be changed for EVs. That impatience is also seen with EV public charging and the price war I predicted. When I did predict it over 2 years ago, people seemed to expect that within a few weeks we'd be seeing EV charging prices being slashed everywhere and a real pitched battle for the lowest price would be ensuing. But EV charging is proceeding very much like the introduction of EV new cars. It's a gradual process. There will be times in that process when there are not enough public chargers to meet the demand from the number of EVs on the road. And there'll also be other times when the number of public chargers exceeds what EVs on the road require. But it was only a few years ago that the drive to install massive numbers of public chargers got underway. Before that, it was very slim pickings indeed, apart from Tesla, who, as a private company, decided they needed the chargers in order to sell EVs to the public. Even they don't have enough chargers. To see how quickly I, with my feet firmly on the ground, expected a price war to arrive, one only has to look at the price war that resulted when the supermarkets, starting in the 60s and 70s, began to sell petrol. Prior to that, you could only buy your petrol at the branded petrol stations run by the likes of Shell, BP and Esso. With that monopoly, petrol prices were amazingly high. It took a long time before the supermarket started selling enough petrol and diesel to even begin to impact the sales of oil giants. Then we saw a price war between the supermarkets over groceries before they realised that the price of the petrol and diesel they were selling could become big and could be used as an advert to attract new customers to their stores where they made the most money. And only at that time did the separate price war in the supermarket petrol stations begin. Even today, 30, 40, maybe 50 years later, those prices are still amazingly low. That price war's still going on. And it's low compared to what the oil giants would really like to charge you. The EV charging network is, at this stage, far too small for this price war to be absolutely prominent out on the roads when we try to charge our cars. However, all the signs are already there. First, when the supermarkets started adding chargers, it was always by renting out a small part of the car park to a CPO, a charge point operator, and they would install and run and take all the money from running those chargers. It was seen more of a, well, we got this space in the car park, let's get someone in to put a charger in. Now they're beginning to see that there is some real serious money to be made from EV charging, and also that the price of the EV charging can be used as an advert or loss leader to get people into their stores where they make the most profit. So a number of supermarkets, including Tesco, Isted and Sainsbury's, have decided that the chargers they'll be putting in will now be theirs, and they will become their own CPO. No longer will they rent out part of the car park. They will now convert a larger part of the car park into their own charger location, buy in the chargers and run them off their own electricity supply. And that now gives them the freedom to be able to choose whatever price they want to charge. Now, when we look at that map, which compiles the data, believe it or not, that the government uses for official figures, they state this month that the average price for public charging in the UK today with an ultra-rapid charger, 77 pence. And that's recently reduced quite dramatically. It used to be 82 pence just a month or so ago. Now, 77 pence is obviously still quite appalling, and if anyone is voluntarily paying this amount or more, then they really need to have a look at an alternative. But a closer look at the market reveals that it is now splintering into 3 distinct areas. We're still desperately holding on to that monopoly. The oil giants all hold the very top end of the market, with prices average anywhere from 80 pence through to, well over 93 pence at some locations. And the really sad thing is, we see some of these being used by EV drivers. What is going on? As long as people use them, they'll keep the high price. They have absolutely no incentive to get involved in a price war when people are still charging at their chargers at those prices. This also applies to certain public chargers like GridServe and Instavolt, with prices of 82 pence and 87% respectively. If you use them, they're going to keep the prices ridiculously high. Well, a second very interesting area includes the supermarkets. See, rather than join the oil giants, they've started their pricing a lot lower than the national average. Sainsbury's is pitching in at 72 pence. Tesco is pricing at 69 pence. Now, at this stage, there's not enough cars charging at enough chargers at enough supermarkets to affect the number of people charging at the oil giants' chargers. But the supermarkets have chosen to sell underneath the oil giant prices. They buy in their own electricity, they negotiate their own deal with their supplier. And they're going to be buying in their electric probably in the 20 or 30 pence per kilowatt hour range. So a price at this stage of around 70 pence is pretty much where I'd expect them to be placed. It's what they can get away with. But that gap remains. Now, in time, there will be a genuine switch from people paying 87 pence plus to people paying 70 pence at the supermarkets. We EV drivers have a free choice. We do not have to go anywhere in particular. So a few minutes checking your local area to find what else is available could save you an absolute fortune. The supermarket network chain is growing and new players are arriving all the time. These will not join the oil giants at the higher prices because they want to be competitive within the supermarket market. It'd be fantastic if we saw that growing at the same time we saw oil giants' business starting to fall away, but that's down to EV drivers. Well, third really interesting area we're seeing is where people have decided that there is a good market, there's still a profit margin to be made, even if you charge a lot less. And a number of examples of this are now springing up. We recently filmed at Arnold Clark, the used car dealers. They have 200 branches throughout the country. They're now seeing used EVs appearing at the dealers. They're selling them. They've also seen there's a market for having EV chargers at their locations and making those EV chargers fully available to the public. Interestingly enough, they've chosen a price of 55 pence nationwide. So this is the third group. It'll be independents who are coming in and saying, they can't compete 79 to 93 pence, nor do they want to. They don't want to get into a direct competition with the supermarkets because that could end up in a real price war with them losing out. So they're setting their own pricing standards and pretty obviously they're not making a loss. We recently filmed at a B.EV charging hubs opening up in a week's, We recently filmed a B.EV charging hub that's opening up towards the end of June in Manchester. And they've set their price at 55 pence during the day, but off-peak rate is 25 pence. So this is the third group. They're now beginning to offer real value. And the biggest problem is they don't yet have enough locations to be making any serious inroads into the supermarkets, which themselves are not yet having a big enough impact on the oil giants to make these changes happen quicker. But there are other locations with these independents that look at even lower prices. And one we discovered recently was SW Energy. And they've taken the unusual step of not bothering to connect the EV chargers to the grid. Instead, they already operate a wind farm which has a mega-pack grid-connected battery. And they have plugged the charging installation directly into that battery, which is at all times full of genuine green electricity direct from those wind turbines. There is obviously mains electricity on the site because the wind turbines sell most of their electricity to the grid. Well, prices vary throughout the day, peaks and troughs, but an average price is revealed by Cornwall Insight, who monitor these prices, and they're showing that it's somewhere around about 80 pence per megawatt hour that you get for selling electricity to the grid. And there's 1,000 kilowatts in every megawatt. So SW Energy has a wind farm selling electricity to the grid at or around 10 pence. Yeah, it'll change, but it will also dip on other occasions up and down. So when they plug the chargers into the Megapack battery, they can sell the electricity for that to themselves at the same price. Now you just need to add in charger for buying them, installing them, running costs, maintenance costs, then add in the 20% VAT. And all of a sudden, they're 39 pence per kilowatt hour charger. That seems remarkably reasonable to both them and their customers. Has anybody counted up how many wind and solar farms are already available in the UK for an EV installation to be plugged straight in? There are plenty. So we can see the future. The supermarkets will take an increasing percentage of the EV charging business in the UK simply because of their location, availability, together when they drop prices in this price war to be a reasonable, if not a good price. The newcomers at the third range at the lower prices like Arnold Clark, SW Energy, they'll be taking a disproportionate percentage of the EV market compared to how many chargers they have in the future. Supermarkets, the third branch, will only grow in number as EV drivers demand ever cheaper prices for charging their cars if they cannot charge at home, or prices for charging their cars at public chargers if they're out on a road trip. Well, a big fly in the ointment, the largest UK's charge point, namely Tesla, who not only supply their own drivers with really cheap charging rates, they now have a network within a network that's open to all EVs, which have a CCS2 charging socket, which today is just about every new car. Whereas the oil giants are charging 80 to 90 pence, the supermarkets around 70 pence, Arnold Clark 55, SW Energy 39. Tesla consistently sells to their own EV drivers at about 30 or 40 pence, and to non-Tesla drivers between 30 and 50 pence. Well, the oil giants have pretty much stopped installing new chargers. This is evidenced by BP's recent statement saying they're losing the amount of profit that they used to be making on the oil business. So they're actually going to switch their focus much more onto the oil business, get the profits up and remove funding they were going to give for renewable energy. That's not a surprise. Well, some viewers might at this point quote Birmingham NEC as a massive new hub gone in by BP Pulse. You're wrong on that one. It wasn't funded by BP Pulse at all. It was a group of investors who wanted to put the chargers in there. It was not installed by BP Pulse. They got contractors in for that. It was just a private consortium who employed BP Pulse to oversee the whole network and brand all the chargers. Over the next few years, supermarkets will begin to take a bigger percentage of the EV charging market, while the third area, in the 50 pence range, will take an even greater percentage, with proportionately fewer EV chargers themselves. Tesla will continue to do exactly what they're doing, which is selling very cheap electricity to Tesla drivers and non-Tesla drivers alike. Pricing war is actually already underway. It's just in such slow motion that many people, they just don't notice it. ZapMap does. The real fly in the ointment, the biggest fly, is just the sheer number of people who would, for some strange, bizarre reason, seem perfectly happy or content to pay 80, 90 or 93 pence for their electricity. Well, if more locations can be connected directly to a wind turbine, a wind farm or a solar farm, and others like Arnold Clark PV continue installing increasing numbers, around the 55p, but cheaper off-peak, there is no long-term future for charging 82 or 93 pence. Must already be apparent to them. They've just not yet seen how they're going to tackle this. ZapMap has already shown prices coming down. Now, with other innovations coming along, like hotels and destination charges offering cheap or free charging, the price trend is already definitely downwards. So to my viewers who think the price war hasn't started, yeah, it has. So are you going to join the increasing number of people who don't complain about EV charging prices? They just get up, they go and find very much cheaper prices. Or are you going to remain stuck in a much larger group who complain about prices and then go and plug into one charging 93p because, hey, it's just at the bottom of the road, it's really handy? I'm Dave. Thanks very much for watching. Oh, if you have enjoyed this, please click the like button. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. Big thank you to our Patreon and YouTube members. Thanks very much for your support. If you'd like to see what all that's about, have a look down below.